everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Experience Maker Live. I'm Dan Gingiss, the Experience Maker. I'm so happy to have you here today on what is Major League Baseball's opening day, hence the baseball cap today. I decided with the Experience Maker cap because I am so depressed about my hometown Cubs. I can't even root for them right now. So I just had to go with the TEM hat instead. And I also wanted to share my other attire here today. I'm wearing my favorite Joe Madden t-shirt that says "Do Simple Better." He, of course, means that in a baseball sense, but I love it in a customer experience sense because we all know that simplicity is such a key part of customer experience. It's what our customers want. They don't like confusing, difficult, complicated, time-consuming. So if we do simple better in customer experience as well, we're going to have customers that like us a whole lot more. Speaking of having lots of customers that like us a whole lot more, I want to introduce you to a friend and a great guest here today. Neal Topf is the president of Callzilla, the Quality First Contact Center. We're going to talk some customer service today with Neal. How you doing, Neal?
Dan, it's great to be with you. Thank you so much for having me. It is not only baseball opening season, it's also Tigers' day back at the Masters. So sports fans need to pay a lot of attention to that. That's a really cool thing. Sorry to get that plug in there. And I want to just put one other plug if you can see, if the audience can see this. Hopefully, let's see where it is. I got my book. There it is. You can see it. Hopefully people can see it. I got the Experience Maker book. There you
Twinsies.
go. Yeah. I put in a plug for you. Sorry.
Well, thank you, sir. Hey, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and about Callzilla?
Thank you. So I am the president and co-founder of Callzilla. We are an outsourced contact center. Some people also refer to us as a business process outsourcer or BPO. We are not, as I tell people that are not in this industry, we are not the ones that call you at 6 o'clock to ask you if you paid your credit card bill. That is not us. We are we'd like to say, hopefully, experts at helping companies acquire and care for the most precious asset, their customers, and do so in a way that is customer experience focused and in a way that is high quality, which we'll definitely get into here in this conversation, how we define that. I do that. I have a CX podcast. I'd love to get to meet people like you, but the day job is Callzilla. I think you may be able to see it bottom there. There it is, my bottom right, maybe your bottom left. There it is.
Awesome. So, all right. So you're in this every day. Tell me, what are you seeing now as we're coming out of 2+ years of being in this pandemic and people working from home and call centers getting bombarded? What are you seeing as we look forward into 2022 in terms of trends in the customer service space?
Yeah, I think that I have every reason to be bullish about the space, about outsourced customer care, about customer experience. But as the famous phrase goes, we need to be cautiously optimistic. And there's reasons for that. Look, we all know there's this thing called the Great Resignation going on. It's difficult to hire people. It's difficult for any company to hire people. But our job as outsourced contact centers, who we deal day to day with the hiring, firing, training, retraining of live people, it's a challenge, and none of us have we haven't cornered the market on how to do that, and we're figuring out how to do that in this crazy environment that is inflationary in salaries, but also challenging in getting people just to be able to want to work. So there's challenges associated with this. That being said, I feel good about it. If you figure out and put the right processes into place, there are ways to do this and to be really successful about it. And we're learning every day how to do it and do it better.
So you're obviously in a people business, and we know that customer service and customer experience is delivered by people. So talk to me about when a company decides to outsource those people. How do you then train these people up and get them to sound like and even feel like they are that they work for the company that they're representing, so that from a customer perspective, it feels seamless?
This is a great question. This is actually the crux of the challenge of our business. We have to be so many things to so many different clients and types of clients. There are clients, brands out there that care intimately, deeply about things like average handle time. If you don't know, average handle time is how much time it takes to get through a conversation, essentially. There are companies that measure that down to the fraction of a second. because they utilize that to calculate something called cost per call. So they're always measuring cost, and one of the big drivers of that is talk time. And it also impacts how many customers you can serve. If the agents are talking 5 minutes or if they're talking 15 minutes, that impacts how many people that they can handle. And by the way, what a terrible term, right? Handle. We're in the business of handling customers. What a really kind of almost offensive term. But how many customers we can handle in a 60-minute hour. All of that is a very cold way of looking at. That's one way of looking at the business. By the way, I'm not a fan of that because it tramples, I believe, on customer experience. The qualitative part of, if we're worried about how quickly we're going to be able to get off the phone and get on to the next call, we're not going to focus on resolving the call. We're not going to focus on being empathetic. We're not going to focus on resolution as much. We're just going to be focused on off, and as many as we can get in and out and be done with it. That's a terrible way of doing business. We have clients that insist on that way of operating, and that's always a kind of creative tension. And then there's the clients that we just adore, that care, that will tell us, yeah, average handle time is important. What's really important is the experience. Where did we resolve the problem? Did we handle the issue in a way that was as short as possible? Was it a way that was as low effort as possible? Was the experience satisfactory? And lots of different ways to measure that. And anyway, it's a long-winded version of saying there's lots of different ways to do this business. Some of them are easier than others. Some of them are really challenging. But the important part, I believe, is the qualitative ability to provide a pleasant experience that is resolution-based. And if you can resolve something in a way that is done as quickly as possible, you have a greater likelihood of achieving satisfaction.
It's interesting that you're talking about some of the companies that are still in 2022 demanding, low handle time and cost savings and all this. And it always begs the question to me of, shouldn't we all want to talk to our customers? Shouldn't that be a pleasure? Shouldn't that be an opportunity? And the flip side of that is, what I think is so interesting is that most customers don't want to call us. So the fact that they are calling in the first place usually means that something in the customer experience didn't go as expected. And so in a lot of ways, it's the company's fault that the person has to call in the first place. And then the reaction to that fault is, I want to get them off the phone as soon as possible, which kind of seems backwards to me. So how do you start to reconcile that? And I guess the last thing I would say is that my feeling is, if we continue to improve the customer experience, one of the benefits is we reduce call volume. And then if we reduce call volume, in theory, we should be able to accept a higher handle time because we have fewer calls.
Yeah. So by the way, you just asked about 14 different questions, I think, in one. Let me see if I can remember all of them, or at least half of them. There's a great debate in this field about the importance or not importance of empathy. I referred to empathy just one question ago, and I do think there's an element of empathy that is important in what we do. I don't think it's the main thing that we should focus on. Yes, it's helpful. It's important to listen or read, make the customer feel that they have been listened to, but more importantly, that we understand what it is that they want or need from us. Sometimes it's important to let them blow off steam. We know that there are customers that call, they treat our reps, like absolute garbage sometimes, but they're blowing off steam. They're upset. They're impassioned because, they can't cancel their service to, fill in the blank brand, right? But there's drivers behind that. And the point that hopefully is to not get them to cancel. If they have to cancel, you let them cancel, but you do so in a way they feel good, hopefully about coming back, not canceling, learning how to use the product or service better, et cetera, et cetera. So empathy is an important one. But again, I don't think it's the be all and end all. I think it's important, but what we need to focus on is getting customers in the door in a way that is as fast as possible. That what's called average speed of answer, ASA. Average speed of answer is really important. You don't want people to wait on a queue or for an hour. That's not sustainable. Customers will leave. They'll get upset. They get pissed off. They'll write bad reviews about you. You want to answer their call, their chat, their email as quickly as possible, and you want to get it resolved as quickly as possible. You're familiar, I'm sure, Dan, with a thing called FCR, first contact resolution. That is an objective that many of us should have, or if not most of us should have, to try to get that problem resolved on the first attempt. And then there's a whole other thing called customer effort score, which you try to make the experience as effortless or as low effort as possible, so that the customer will feel good and they won't feel like they have wasted their time. Going back to, I think your question is, yeah, why do we just feel like we need to get them in and out, in and out, in and out? We want to get them out because we want to resolve their problem, but we don't want them to make it feel like it's a factory, and we need to make sure that their touch point with us, touch point or touch points, are satisfactory. They're pleasant. They are empathetic. They felt that they were listened to. It is a luxury to have customers. They are our assets. It took, by the way, for the bean counters, the CFOs, and I say this in a complimentary fashion, they know how much it costs to acquire a customer, and they know how much it costs to lose a customer or to try to win them back. And if you pay attention to the C-suite, the financial people in the C-suite, we have to treat the customers like kings while they are there, because losing them is extremely wasteful and expensive.
I couldn't agree more, but that therein lies that tension, right? Is that if we're still tracking things like average handle time, it's hard to treat the customer like a king or queen, because we're so focused on racing to get them off the phone. Which I think is an interesting tension, and I do think over time it has relieved itself a little bit in that as the C-suite starts to realize that, yeah, better to spend a little bit more money now so that our customer stays with us than try to rush them off the phone, lose them, and then have to go spend a lot more money to acquire a new one. I want to shift the conversation a little bit to hiring, because I know that obviously the pandemic has thrown that into disarray as well. But what are some of the things that you look for in a great customer service agent?
This is a challenge. So we used to have the pick, right? We used to interview 100 people for a couple spots, and we'd have the luxury of saying, I keep using the word luxury, we'd have the luxury of saying, which one is the most empathetic? Which one is the most, has the greatest number of years of experience? Which one has all the certifications? Which one not only has experience, but also has, the undergraduate college degree? We used to have the ability to do a lot of picking and choosing. It's a different game now. And there are times, I'll admit it here, there are times that you have to sacrifice, and you're not going to be able to get the ideal candidate because it doesn't exist today like it used to. What I believe that the 2022 version of the ideal candidate is, however, is someone that is willing to be trained, willing to understand and open their eyes and ears and minds to what is the brand voice, the customer service vision, the customer service objectives, and of course the KPIs. But it's got to be something that's willing to be trained. There's another interesting thing that we've experienced, which is we used to, and we still do this, by the way, to sell the version that we want people to embark on a career path with us. We're not content with people just being customer service agents. We have the ability to offer a career path for people. You start as a customer service agent, you become a supervisor, or you move into the, what used to be called the QA field, quality assurance, and you work in QA. And then you kind of work your way up depending on the different area, or you become a trainer. Those things always exist. And what we've tried to tell our team members is contact center and call center is not a place you just kind of stop and, park yourself for a couple months until you find the next best job. We really do believe that there's a career path here, and there are so many opportunities within our own company and our competitor companies to rise up and rise up and rise up and rise up if you do a good job. But the point, I think, is to be flexible, to be willing to learn. The other thing that's tricky is the ability to actively listen, knowing when to shut up, as we say, and listen to a customer. That's really difficult. I personally don't have that. I don't have that skill to be able to listen and not get passionate or to fight back or to argue. It's tough to be able to take that psychological beating of someone who's upset and doing that for 60 minutes every hour. That's tough. But the ability, I think, to be able to be patient, withstand that, and work through that, and then provide the service that's required. That's something we try to identify as best as possible. That, I think, is a mandatory component that we can't sacrifice.
So I know this might be the $64,000 question, but do you think that you can teach empathy?
I think you can be taught to fake it, to be honest. You can be taught to hopefully shut up and listen. It's a really difficult thing to teach people to really care. I'm really sorry, Mr. Gingiss, that your flight was canceled, that you're going to miss, the occasion that you were traveling to. Can I go the extra mile and provide you, a night's hotel stay at the JW Marriott? Like, that's difficult to teach. I think that you are born with that. I think that people can be successful with elements of those skills, but the ones that are truly empathetic, those are the ones that shine. Those are gifts to us.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it is really hard to teach that part. You can teach people the systems, you can teach people the company policies and the brand and all that sort of thing, and the scripting, and that's all learnable. But it is really hard to find those people that are naturally empathetic, that are naturally curious and are going to ask questions and are interested in the answers, that want to engage with people, because when somebody says I'm a people person, that's a lot of times what that means. So, I have a question from Yvonne. Actually, he's just sort of asking some hypothetical questions, but I think it's good for the topic that we're talking about. What is the benefit to our service product of the support call? What did we learn? How can we improve so we minimize calls as an initial unsatisfactory act of our customer? So if I can rephrase that for a second, Neal, what I think Yvonne is asking is, what do you do in terms of tracking or reporting or other types of things to identify that, hey, we can solve the problem for this individual customer, but this is something that's affecting many customers. And so we need to go down to the root cause of it, which of course is not going to be your problem to fix. It's going to be your client's problem. But can you walk us through how does that go down so that ultimately we close that loop and we fix the problem that's causing the calls in the first place?
Yvonne, that's an incredible question. Dan, you did a great job, I think, kind of repackaging it, because it was tricky. There's lots of things going on in that question. So, as contact center agents and being the voice, and our responsibility is to represent the brand voice of the customer, it's okay not to know how to fix the widget that is embedded in the whatever product that was bought. It's okay not to know that. What is not okay is to dismiss it. We have to do something with that, and we have to explain to the customer, listen, I'm not exactly sure. Please give me a few minutes. I'm going to put you on hold, or I'm going to check, or I need a few minutes to read through my notes. By the way, the notes are like, hopefully in a contact center, it's called the knowledge base, where if you even have it, you do a search for widget fixing in the gasket, or whatever it is in the knowledge base. Hopefully that that there's an entry in there that goes to how you address that issue, and it talks about the workflows and all those things. Those are the ability to manage that situation of not knowing, expressing it when you don't know, but finding a solution. And that may mean a callback. It may mean a follow-up. It may need an escalation to a supervisor. It may need an escalation even to, like in real time, back to, in this case, our client that may have, the tier 2 or tier 3 support. That's the way you handle those things. But the point is, I think, to manage expectations. Don't BS it, because the customer knows if you don't know the answer. The customers are never stupid. They know when you don't know, but it's okay to admit it. Manage it, handle it, and let the person know that you need a few minutes, or you need an hour, or you're going to call them back, or something like that, and to have the tools at your disposal as a contact center agent to be able to effectively handle and then resolve the situation. Did I answer that? There's a lot in there, but I think that's kind of the high level easier.
I think so. I want to dig a little bit deeper in terms of how do you then reconnect back to the client and say, look, we're getting all these calls about this problem with this widget. One of the ways that you can reduce your customer service expenses is to fix the darn problem with the widget, and we won't get all these calls. How does that process work?
It's a great question. And you and I have spoken a little bit about some of these technologies in quality assurance. What used to be called quality assurance is now called referred to as quality management. So there's some great technology out there. Some people call it speech analytics technology. Other people call it conversational analytics, that can break down a conversation and identify keywords, right? In the old days of QA, you'd be evaluating and scoring Was the agent friendly? Did the agent read the verbatim? Did the agent display active listening? And those are things that are great, they're important. But this new technology that is listening to the calls, software that's listening to the calls and identifying trends, sentiment, keywords, it has the ability with the right programming to be able to identify and realize that, wait a minute, the word widget has now been mentioned 375 times in the last hour. Wait a minute, here's a trend. And you create workflows around that. And that's what our organization is learning how to do, to be smarter and detect those trends and know what to do with them so that it gets into the right hands, that the supervisor or that our client knows that the word widget is now being mentioned 375 times in the last 58 minutes and 75 and 35 seconds. We may have an issue here. What should we do with it? And we decide together. That's the way an intelligent contact center needs to begin to operate. That's when the true value is added. And we're getting there. We're not exactly there yet. We're learning how to use this. And I'll admit it's a challenge to now have these incredible tools at our disposal. But that's where it gets really fun. You can help and add value. I'll give you another example, by the way, similar. We have a couple clients actually, that whose customers, when they don't feel good, they will complain about the product and say, I'm contacting the Better Business Bureau, and they pound the table. Better Business Bureau, or they'll say BBB. Whoa, those are pretty powerful words. We've created alerts for those mentions and workflows when those three words or those initials BBB are mentioned, that involve escalations and certain workflows of how those cases get handled as a priority compared to the others. That's where the technology is really beneficial.
So I like technology as much as the next person. I'm all for it. I'm curious. Let's say I'm an agent, and let's say I just happen to observe, because I've taken 10 calls today and 4 of them have mentioned this widget problem. Is there a way for the human to speak up and say, hey, supervisor or whoever I need to tell, I'm sensing that there might be a theme here? Because I certainly found in business that, sometimes it's like I always used to joke that at one of the companies I worked for, we used to find out that our website was down from Twitter because we'd see the tweets come in faster than even IT knew that the website was down, right? So sometimes you have to get this information from somewhere else. How do you empower your agents to help report that stuff up too, and not necessarily have to wait for a text analytics tool?
I'll be honest, it's a challenge. Empowering is a challenge, and getting people aligned with the objectives of the business. We talk a lot about the power of one. This is a concept that's used and discussed a lot in workforce management. What the impact of the behavior of one agent is. What happens when the agent doesn't show up to work? What happens when an agent calls out sick? What happens when an agent is messing around, is not logged in when they should be logged in? What happens when an agent is, doubling their average handle time? And getting them to understand the power of one, the impact that they have on the business, on the customer experience. And the things that you talk about, it's a constant process of getting the agents to understand that, wait a minute, if you're detecting something, raise your hand. Don't keep it to yourself. There is tremendous value in information. And even though you're not generating a report that says that, I gave the funny example of 375 mentions in the last 53 minutes or whatever, the power of one matters. The agents say, wait a minute, I just got 2 phone calls, in the last couple during my shift, and they both mentioned something that's not usual. But getting the team to work and march in that beat, that's when I think that the organization is truly customer centric. That's the objective. That's where we all need to go to. I can't tell you that we're 100% there yet, but it's a constant, call it fight process to get there.
Absolutely. Because and sometimes you have to incent it, right? There has to be, sometimes that agent needs a reason that they are going to speak up, because they don't want to feel that speaking up is just going to create more work for them or is going to create more issues. So totally makes sense. Neal Topf is the president, CEO of Callzilla, the Quality First Contact Center. And Neal, how can people get a hold of you or Callzilla if they'd like to learn more?
I appreciate that, Dan. So I'm on LinkedIn, as so we're doing this LinkedIn Live right now. LinkedIn, is a great way to find me. I spend way too much time on it, but please connect with me here. Send me a direct message on LinkedIn. I enjoy it. I really enjoy interacting with our peers there. I'm on Twitter. the Twitter, the @ Neal Topf. I'm on Facebook. I try to keep Facebook for personal stuff, but Twitter or LinkedIn is definitely the best way to find me. I thank you for asking that.
Awesome. And of course, people can go to callzilla.com as well to learn more about your organization.
Callzilla.cx. Sorry, just to correct. We got rid of the .com and .net. We are .cx. We're in the vanguard now of internet domain, .cx.
What I'm going to do, because I just made that mistake, I'm going to put it up on the screen there. Callzilla.cx. Callzilla.cx is where you want to go if you want to learn about Neal's company, Callzilla, the Quality First Contact Center. Neal, thank you so much for sharing all of your experience and wisdom with us today. It's been a lot of fun talking with you.
Dan, thank you so much. Again, for your audience, this is a great book. Read this book. I love it. I learned from Dan. I love consuming Dan's content.
He's showing this one, everyone.
Yeah, there. I don't know what's wrong with my camera, but it's here next to me. It's on my desk. I read it. It's a pleasure to spend time and generate some content together. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you again, Neal. Really appreciate it. And thank you as well for being here today on Major League Baseball's opening day and the Masters opening up with Tiger as well. Thanks for being here. I want to promo next week's guest. Next week, we are going to have Andy Greenwald with us. Andy is the co-founder and CEO of a company called Story Hub, which is helping e-commerce brands turn data into happier customers. And the way they're doing that is by telling stories with the data, which I think is a fascinating idea, something that more companies should be doing, especially for folks that maybe aren't as quantitatively minded and don't want to stare at a whole spreadsheet full of numbers. You tell them a story and they can do something with that. Thanks again for being here. I appreciate it. My name is Dan Gingiss. I'm the Experience Maker. You can find me at dangingiss.com, also on LinkedIn at Dan Gingiss, on Twitter at dgingiss. Always happy to chat with you. We'll see you next week and have a great weekend.